Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the psychology of self-discovery, mental resilience, and living a meaningful life. And today, I'm beyond excited to share a personal story that changed the way I see my emotions, my mind, and my entire life. This journey is inspired by a profound quote from Shi Heng, the head monk of the Shaolin Temple, Europe, who said, "Feeling is the proclamation of the mind. What you feel is something that was first built in your mind." When I first heard this, it hit me like a lightning bolt. It made me realize that the emotions I experience, whether joy, fear, or frustration, aren't just random. They're constructed by my thoughts, my perceptions, and the stories I tell myself. In this video, I'm going to take you through a deeply personal experience where I applied this wisdom to transform my life. This is a story of struggle, reflection, and growth. And by the end, I hope you'll walk away with practical tools to harness the power of your mind, just as I did. So grab a notebook, get comfortable, and let's dive into this journey together. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update from PSYCHIANT. Let's get started. A few years ago, I found myself in a dark place. I was in my late 20s, working a demanding job, chasing deadlines, and trying to balance a social life that felt more like an obligation than a joy. On the surface, everything looked fine. I had a decent career, supportive friends, and a roof over my head. But inside, I was drowning in a sea of anxiety, self-doubt, and overwhelming stress. I felt like my emotions were controlling me, like I was a passenger in my own life, unable to steer the wheel. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I sat down with a cup of tea and stumbled across a TEDx talk by Shi Heng. His calm presence and piercing wisdom caught my attention immediately when he said, "Feeling is a proclamation of the mind." Okay, what you feel is something that was first built in your mind. I paused the video, I replayed it, and then I replayed it again. It was as if he was speaking directly to me. Okay, at that moment, I realized something profound. The anxiety I was feeling wasn't just happening to me. It was something I was creating, or at least something my mind was creating. The constant worry about failing at work, the fear of disappointing others, the frustration when things didn't go my way. These weren't external forces. They were stories I was telling myself, narratives I was building in my mind. This realization was both empowering and terrifying. Empowering because it meant I had some control over my emotions. Terrifying because it meant I had to take responsibility for them. No more blaming my boss, my circumstances, or the world. If my feelings were born in my mind, then I had to look inward to change them. I decided to take Shi Heng's words to heart and embark on a journey to understand my mind. But let me be honest, this wasn't easy. The first step was observing my thoughts. And let me tell you, my mind was a chaotic place. It was like trying to listen to a radio station with 10 different channels playing at once. Thoughts about work, relationships, pessimistic, and future fears were all jumbled together, and I didn't know where to start. I began by practicing mindfulness, something Shi Heng often emphasizes in his teachings. I started small 5 minutes of meditation each morning, just focusing on my breath. At first, it felt pointless. My mind wandered constantly, and I'd get frustrated, thinking, "I'm terrible at this." But then I remembered another piece of Shi Heng's wisdom. Patience is part of mastery. So I kept going, even when it felt like I was failing. Over time, I started to notice patterns. For example, every time I had a big presentation at work, my mind would spiral into worst-case scenarios. What if I mess up? What if my boss thinks I'm incompetent? These thoughts weren't just random. They were habits, mental grooves I carved over years of self-doubt. And those thoughts were directly shaping my feelings of anxiety and dread. Shi Heng's quote became my anchor. If my feelings were a proclamation of my mind, then I needed to change what my mind was proclaiming. I started journaling every evening, writing down my thoughts and emotions without judgment. I'd ask myself, what story am I telling myself right now? Is it true? Is it helpful? The simple practice helped me see how much of my suffering was self-inflicted, not because I was weak, but because I hadn't yet learned to guide my mind. The real breakthrough came about 6 months into this journey. I was facing a major life decision, whether to stay in my high-pressure job or take a leap into a new career path that felt more aligned with my values but was far less secure. The fear was steadily. Every night I'd lie awake, my heart racing, imagining all the ways this decision could go wrong. One day, I decided to approach this fear using Shi Heng's wisdom. I sat down, closed my eyes, and asked myself, what is my mind building right now? I realized I was constructing a narrative of failure. If I leave this job, I'll run out of money. I'll disappoint my family. I'll never recover. These thoughts were so vivid, so real, that they felt like truth. But were they? I decided to challenge them. I wrote down every fear, and then next to each one, I wrote a counter narrative. For example, if I leave this job, I might struggle financially for a while, but I'll gain freedom to pursue work that fulfills me. I've overcome challenge before, and I can do it again. This wasn't about ignoring reality. It was about choosing which story to focus on. Okay. To my surprise, this exercise shifted something inside me. The fear didn't disappear, but it lost its grip. I started to feel a sense of possibility, even excitement. I realized that my mind wasn't just creating fear, it could also create hope, courage, and clarity. This was the power of Shi Heng's teaching. By changing what I built in my mind, I could change what I felt in my heart. Inspired by Shi Heng's Shaolin background, I decided to incorporate more discipline into my life. I started practicing Qigong, a form of meditative movement that Shi Heng often teaches. Okay, it was challenging at first. My body was stiff, my mind was restless, but over time, it became a way to connect my mind and body. Each movement felt like a reminder. I am in control of what I build. I also began to apply this mindset to everyday situations. For example, when I felt frustrated in traffic, I'd pause and ask, what am I proclaiming right now? Often, I'd realize I was telling myself, this is a waste of time and I'm going to be late for everything. Instead, I'd shift the narrative. This is a moment to practice patience. I can use this time to listen to a podcast or just breathe. Slowly but surely, my emotional reaction started to change. One of the most powerful moments came during a conflict with a close friend. We had a misunderstanding and I felt hurt and angry. My first instinct was to lash out, to let my emotions take over. But I remembered Shi Heng's words. I stepped back, took a few deep breaths, and asked myself, what is my mind building here? I realized I was constructing a story of betrayal, assuming my friend didn't care about me. Instead of reacting, I chose to have an open conversation. I expressed how I felt without blame, and I listened to their perspective. It turned out to be a simple miscommunication, and we resolved it quickly. That moment taught me that my feelings weren't facts. They were interpretation, and I had the power to reinterpret them. As I continued to apply Shi Heng's wisdom, I started to see my life in a new light. The anxiety that once dominated my days became less frequent. The self-doubt that used to hold me back began to fade. I wasn't perfect, far from it, but I was learning to be the architect of my own mind. This journey also made me realize that Shi Heng's teaching isn't just about managing emotion. It's about living with intention. Every thought we entertain, every story we tell ourselves, shapes the reality we experience. If we let our minds run wild, we'll be at the mercy of chaos. But if we take responsibility for what we build, we can create a life of purpose, resilience, and peace. For me, this meant making bold choices. I ended up leaving the high-pressure job and starting a new career path. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt and struggle, but every time fear crept in, I reminded myself, what you feel is something that was first built in your mind. I chose to build courage instead of fear, and that made all the difference. Now, I want to share some practical tools that helped me apply Shi Heng's wisdom in my life. These are simple but powerful practices you can start today. 1. Mindful observation. Spend 5 minutes each day observing your thoughts without judgment. Just notice what's happening in your mind. Are you building fear, hope, and gut? This awareness is the first step to change. 2. Journaling for clarity. Every evening, write down one emotion you felt strongly that day. Then, ask yourself, what story did my mind create to produce this feeling? Challenge that story and write a new one that serves you better. 3. Reframe your narrative. When you're facing a challenge, pause and ask, what am I proclaiming right now? Write down the negative narrative, then create a positive counter. For example, Tarna I am going to fail into I am learning and growing through this challenge. 4. Practice Qigong or meditation. If you're new to Qigong, try a simple guided session online. Even 5 minutes of mindful movement or meditation can help you connect with your mind and body. 5. Pause before reacting. When you feel a strong emotion, take 3 deep breaths before responding. This gives you a moment to check what your mind is building and choose a better response. Shi Heng's words, feeling is the proclamation of the mind. What you feel is something that was first built in your mind, have been a guiding light in my life. They've taught me that I'm not a victim of my emotions. I'm their creator. And with that power comes the responsibility to build wisely. My journey isn't over, and neither is yours. We're all works in progress, learning to master our minds one thought at a time. I hope my story has inspired you to take a closer look at the narratives you're rebuilding and to choose ones that lift you up rather than hold you back. If this video resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Drop a comment below and let me know. What stories are you building in your mind right now? How can you reframe them to create a better feeling? Thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to Shi Heng for his timeless wisdom. If you want more content like this, subscribe to PSYCHIANT, hit that notification bell, and check out our playlists on mindfulness and personal growth. Until next time, keep building a mind that serves you. See you in the next video.